In 1950, the world was holding its breath. Two ancient civilizations, newly reborn as modern nations, were stirring. To the north, the People's Republic of China, forged in revolution and led by the Communist Party. To the south, the Republic of India, the world's largest democracy, taking its first steps in freedom. In our timeline, these two giants were set on a path to rivalry, their relationship poisoned by suspicion and a bitter border war. But what if history had taken a sharp, unexpected turn? What if, instead of clashing, they chose to walk together? Picture this. It's 1955. Over Beijing and New Delhi, the familiar flags of China and India are lowered for the very last time. In their place, a single new banner rises, a symbol of a political experiment so audacious it's almost unthinkable. This is the birth of the Sino-Indian Union, a single nation stretching from the Pamir Mountains to the South China Sea. It's home to over 1 billion people, more than a third of all humanity. A nation born from two giants, one communist, one democratic. This is the story of how that union could have forged a new world, not through conquest, but through the most volatile political merger in human history, the point of divergence. So how could an impossible union like this ever come to pass? We have to go back to the mid-1950s. In our history, the relationship between China and India started off surprisingly warm. The slogan of the day was Hindi Chini Bye Bye, meaning Indians and Chinese are brothers. Both nations had shaken off foreign domination and saw themselves as leaders of a new post-colonial world. This friendship was even formalized in the 1954 Panchsheel Agreement, a treaty built on 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. But that spirit of brotherhood was paper-thin. Tensions over the disputed border and China's annexation of Tibet were already eating away at the trust between them. The breaking point, of course, was when the Dalai Lama fled to India in 1959, an event that put both nations on a direct path to the 1962 war. But in our alternate timeline, the thing that brings them together isn't peace, but a shared existential threat. The point of divergence happens in 1955. With the Cold War heating up, a radical faction within the US government decides to get aggressive. Fearing a domino effect in Asia, it authorizes a series of covert ops that go way beyond anything in our timeline. The goal isn't just to contain, but to actively break both China and India. China for being communist, and India for its stubborn policy of non-alignment, which Washington saw as a betrayal. Suddenly, a wave of coordinated attacks creates chaos. Sabotaged industrial projects in China's northeast are mirrored by attacks on India's new dams and steel plants. At the same time, externally funded insurgencies in Tibet and India's northeast flare up, armed with advanced American weapons. The final straw, a failed but very public assassination attempt on Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, and just weeks later on Prime Minister Nehru in New Delhi. Washington denies everything, but for Beijing and New Delhi, the evidence is undeniable. Facing a common enemy, Mao Zedong and Jawaharlal Nehru are forced into a series of secret, high-stakes meetings. Nehru, the idealist, sees a chance to create a powerful, non-aligned third bloc. Mao, the ultimate pragmatist, sees a strategic necessity. China is still weak from decades of war, and India doesn't have the muscle to stand alone. In a secret summit in late 1955, they agree on a wild solution. Not a weak alliance, but a full political union. They draft the Charter of Union, a document proposing a unique two-system federal structure. China becomes the northern state, India the southern state, and each gets to keep its own political and economic system for a 25-year transition. A new central government will handle defense, foreign policy, and a single currency. It's a desperate gamble, a shotgun wedding between the dragon and the elephant, born from a shared threat. The world is about to change forever. The immediate aftermath, 1950s to 1960s. The announcement of the Sino-Indian Union doesn't just send shockwaves, it shatters the global order. The United States and the Soviet Union are equally horrified. Washington's plan backfired spectacularly, creating the very superpower it was trying to prevent. Moscow is stunned watching its communist brother jump into bed with a bourgeois democracy, viewing it as a betrayal of Marxist-Leninist principles. But the real drama is happening inside the new superstate. The first decade is a chaotic, nearly impossible balancing act. The central government, set up in the neutral, purpose-built capital of Shanti-Heping, meaning peace, in both Hindi and Mandarin, becomes the world's most explosive political theatre. The core conflict is ideological. How does a one-party state governed by the Chinese Communist Party share power with a loud, messy, multi-party democracy? The first joint parliamentary sessions are a spectacle. Indian representatives, used to shouting matches and debate, are met by the unnerving, unified silence of the CCP delegates. The CCP's methods of crushing dissent directly clash with India's core belief in free speech. The first big crisis is the economy. China's Soviet-style first five-year plan was already underway, focused on state-run heavy industry. In our timeline, 1958 was the year Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, a disaster that led to a massive famine. In this new reality, Indian economists in the central government are horrified by the radical collectivization plans. After tense debate, a compromise is reached. The Great Leap Forward still happens, but it's moderated. Indian agricultural experts with experience managing famine-prone regions are sent to the northern state. They don't stop collectivization, but they introduce less radical techniques and better distribution. The result isn't perfect. There are still severe shortages and millions of lives are ruined, but the absolute worst of the famine is averted. It's a painful early sign that cooperation might actually work. Meanwhile, merging the militaries is another nightmare. The People's Liberation Army, a guerrilla force turned national army, has a totally different mindset from the British-structured Indian armed forces. Mistrust runs deep. Chinese commanders are suspicious of the Indian officer class, while Indian officers are wary of the PLA's political commissars and their loyalty to the party. The Tibet issue, which tore them apart in our world, is now a massive internal problem. Under pressure from its Indian Democratic wing, the Union government grants Tibet a degree of autonomy that Mao would have never allowed on his own. It isn't independence, but it's enough to calm the most violent resistance, though the region remains a scar, a constant reminder of the fault lines running through this new nation. By the end of the 1960s, the Sino-Indian Union has survived its birth. It's a dysfunctional, argumentative family, but it's still a family. Forging a nation, the great internal struggle. If the first decade was about survival, the 1970s and 80s were about figuring out what this new nation would actually become. The 25-year transition period is nearing its end, and the big question looms: will the Union go communist or democratic? The answer, it turns out, is neither. Economically, the two systems start bleeding into each other. In the southern state, India, there's a new appreciation for the sheer power of state-led mobilization. The Union government launches massive infrastructure projects that bind the two halves together. Think a high-speed rail line connecting Harbin to Kanyakumari and the colossal Himalayan Aqueduct, a project that redirects water from the Brahmaputra to the dry plains of both northern China and northwest India. These projects are brutal and come at a huge human cost, but they tie the nation together with concrete and steel. In the northern state, China, the South's market economy starts to seep in. Small-scale private enterprise, a staple of the Indian economy, is introduced in special economic zones in cities like Shanghai and Guangzhou. CCP hardliners hate it, but the zones are wildly successful. This hybrid model, dubbed market socialism with Indian characteristics, combines the industrial might of the North with the entrepreneurial energy of the South, laying the groundwork for an economic explosion. Culturally, the fusion is even more fascinating and messy. Mandarin and Hindi become compulsory in all schools. For one generation, it's a chore. For the next, it creates a massive bilingual population. In the port cities, a new pidgin language emerges, a mix of Hindi, Mandarin, and English, becoming the language of the street. Bollywood and the Chinese film industry merge, creating epic historical dramas based on the Mahabharata, but filmed on a grand Chinese scale. Of course, this fusion creates sparks. The collectivist Han mindset often clashes with the fiercely individualistic and diverse cultures of India. Riots break out over cultural misunderstandings or economic fears. The central government often responds with the North's heavy-handed security forces, provoking outrage in the South's free press. This becomes the Union's central tension, the state's demand for stability versus the people's demand for freedom. It's not a melting pot. It's a pressure cooker. But while the Union was wrestling with its own identity, the Cold War was reaching its peak. This new, unpredictable giant was about to change all the rules. How would America and the Soviet Union deal with a rival that was neither capitalist nor communist? Before we get to that, if you're enjoying this journey into an alternate past, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss what comes next. The Colossus on the world stage, 1970s to 1990s. The Sino-Indian Union completely rewrites the Cold War. Suddenly, it's not a two-player game between Washington and Moscow anymore, it's a three-way standoff. The Union is a superpower from day one, but it plays by its own rules, sticking to Nehru's policy of non-alignment, now backed by Mao's formidable military. The Soviet Union is probably the biggest loser here. The historical Sino-Soviet split becomes a massive chasm. Moscow views the Union's hybrid system as ideological heresy. The Union, in turn, feels no need for a big brother and charts its own path. The United States has to throw out its old playbook. Containment is useless. The Union is too big to contain. Washington shifts to a tricky strategy of competitive engagement, quietly supporting pro-democracy movements in the South while doing business with the central government. The Vietnam War plays out differently too. Sharing a border, the Union provides support to North Vietnam, but also acts as a powerful diplomatic broker, forcing a negotiated peace years earlier than in our timeline. The Union's nuclear program, combining Chinese and Indian expertise, produces a bomb by the mid-1960s. Its doctrine is simple and terrifying, a strict no-first-use policy, but with the promise of overwhelming massive retaliation if attacked. This makes the Union untouchable. By the 1980s, as the Soviet Union crumbles, the Union's hybrid economy is roaring. It becomes the world's workshop. But unlike in our timeline, where development was concentrated in China, here it's spread out. Industrial hubs pop up not just along the Pearl River Delta, but also on the coasts of Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh. When the Soviet Union falls in 1991, it's not seen as a victory for capitalism, but as a win for the Union's third way. The world is left with two superpowers, the United States and the Sino-Indian Union. One, a liberal democracy. The other, a complex authoritarian democratic hybrid. The stage is set for the defining rivalry of the 21st century, an alternate present, 2000s to present day. So what does the world look like in this alternate present? It's both familiar and completely alien. The Sino-Indian Union is the world's largest economy and home to over 2 billion people. Its megacities are connected by maglev trains that cross the continent in hours. The political system has morphed into a unique beast. The central government is still authoritarian, dominated by a reformed but powerful Communist Party. The southern state has kept its democratic institutions, but they operate on a leash. The press is lively and critical, but everyone knows there are red lines you just don't cross. It's managed democracy on a scale never seen before. Technologically, the Union is a world leader. It dominates AI, biotech, and green energy, the last one driven by the urgent need to power a nation of 2 billion. The global internet is fractured. Instead of the Great Firewall of China, there's a union-wide janitor wall, a self-contained digital ecosystem with its own social media, search engines, and tech giants that give Silicon Valley a run for its money. Geopolitically, the world is balanced on a knife edge between the US and the Union. They are fierce competitors in a new space race to Mars, but they're also forced partners in fighting climate change and pandemics. The rivalry isn't about ideology anymore, it's about spheres of influence and control over global resources. The Union's greatest challenge remains the one within. That deep cultural and political divide between North and South never went away. It's a permanent fault line. The generation born today might speak the hybrid language and see themselves as citizens of this giant nation, but they also carry the traditions of two of the world's most ancient civilizations. The union is proof that unity can be forced from radical diversity, but it's also a constant, simmering reminder of just how fragile that unity can be. A union between China and India would have created a nation of impossible scale. Born from crisis and defined by conflict, it would have been held together by sheer willpower. This colossus, a hybrid of authoritarian control and democratic chaos, would have reshaped the Cold War, accelerated Asia's rise by 50 years, and created a 21st century rival to the US built on a totally different model of civilization. It wouldn't have been a utopia. The cost in freedom, especially in the early years, would have been immense, but it also might have averted famines, prevented wars, and lifted billions from poverty at incredible speed. It leaves us with a huge question. Can two civilizations, two ideologies, two worlds ever truly become one? Or would the internal contradictions eventually tear it all apart? What do you think would be the ultimate fate of this colossal nation? Let me know in the comments below.